Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges, and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. This is part two of a discussion I'm currently having with Pepijn Visser, Vice President, SAP SuccessFactors Payroll Product Management at SAP, Stephen Burr, Vice President, Professional Services and Group Head of SuccessFactors at Zalaris, and Adam Frank, SAP Functional Lead at KCA Deutag and Co-Chair of the UKISUG Payroll Special Interest Group. And we're discussing the latest challenges, trends, and developments in the SAP HR and payroll space. So, thank you, gentlemen, for the conversation we've had so far. And just to move into the next phase of our discussion, we've discussed quite a lot of things around kind of the benefit over cloud, over on-prem. And one of the things that, I've heard over the past few years from our members is the challenges perhaps of moving from SAP Payroll to SAP SuccessFactors Payroll and some of the challenges they've had in making that move. And I'm sure things have developed quite a bit since a lot of those challenges were discussed. And if I may start with you, Pepijn, on what customers need to consider when moving from the on-prem payroll world into the SuccessFactors Payroll world.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So we touched upon this in our last discussion. The standardization is an important part of. In the cloud, we run the software in a certain way, and we restrict the possibilities, and that is a pain, if you want to say so. From moving from on-premise into the cloud, that is certainly going to hurt, but it's also going to help in that it is an advantage in the sense that it's more maintainable. SuccessFactors has a huge, or I have to say, SAP SuccessFactors has a huge installed base in payroll. We have 10,000 customers in payroll. So looking at those customers and looking at the patterns in there, we certainly can't say that the situation is for everyone the same. So the challenges will be different for different customers, and moving into the cloud is really very much an individual decision of the companies to say, where are the pain points at this moment? Where's my time pressure? Do I need to move early, or can I wait a few years? What kind of cost do I want to reduce? So certainly not a one-size-fits-all approach in that decision making of when and how you go to move to the cloud. For that reason, we also have a different portfolio of options, right? Because our customers have clearly told us it's not that one single solution in the cloud that is going to satisfy all my needs, and I can't move there. Some customers very complex requirements say, well, I'm not ready to accept that standardization in Employee Central Payroll, for instance. So for them, we created the possibility to say, well, if the pressure is on moving into the cloud, getting rid of your infrastructure, then we have a private cloud edition of SAP ERP. So that is an offering that we recently introduced, where we don't force this standardization yet, where we don't say, well, you do have to use SuccessFactors Employee Central, but you can make your first step into the cloud. So that's one option we offer customers. And you see that the larger customers like that option because they don't have to change a lot in what they have already done. They can use the add-ons, they can use their integrations, they can all the programs, the custom programs that they and partners have developed on top of that, they can bring that into the cloud. So if the pain point is, I want to be in the cloud, I want to get rid of my infrastructure, then that is a good option. Employee Central Payroll forces you to use SuccessFactors. If you say, yes, I want to use SuccessFactors, I want to tap into the benefits of that we discussed an earlier session of SuccessFactors, start somewhere and go anywhere. All those innovations that are being done in that area. So if you want to tap in there, and if your payroll processing is an issue, or you want to have a more modern approach and follow that, then you need to start going into the SuccessFactors world. And the typical way to start there is Employee Central, because it's, as the word says, central for a lot of SuccessFactors products. It's a very good starting point, and from there you can extend to time, to benefits, and payroll, but also to modules like talent management and recruiting. So it gives the flexibility. Our philosophy is very much like, it's not one solution that brings it all for the customers, but more an option, providing options that suit certain customers better than others. And on top of that, besides providing the options, we also realize that a lot of our customers, for instance, have an outsourced payroll for their long tail. They have an in-house payroll for the larger countries, an outsourced payroll for the long tail countries. Now that means that you want to have different payroll engines, if you like, at the same time. Now that is also something that we would like to cater for, and to say, well, hey, that is simply a fact that there are different payroll engines, not necessarily only SAP payrolls, but we're going to work towards the goal of saying, well, we have one Employee Central instance where you can have your master data, but depending on the setting and the country, maybe you have different payroll engines connected to that.
Thank you. And Stephen, what are you seeing from your customers?
Yeah, our customers, I think you've kind of touched on what actually our customers ask all the time. They talk about SuccessFactors moving to the cloud, HR driven topics, and I think the decision's kind of clearer there in terms of, SuccessFactors, user experience, internet and mobile enabled, and we talked on in our previous discussion. And then the question comes, what about payroll? What do we do with payroll? What are our options? And you could almost draw yourself a little flowchart here, because it can, and I think I actually have seen an SAP presentation where they pretty much did draw this decision tree flowchart, because I think one of the first places to start is really to see what the customer's using of SAP now. If you're using SAP across your enterprise in lots of areas such as finance, procurement, warehousing, etc., then you might want to retain some of that investment that you've got on premise. If you're going to retain that, you might say, actually, we don't want to risk our, a payroll deployment, or we don't want to move that. That just seems like it's not necessarily giving us a huge benefit, introducing a risk or complexity, and we're maybe not ready to do that now. To effectively move to something that is running the same technology, because let's not forget, there's some great advantages with EC Payroll. There's no end of life. It's classed as a cloud product. It's hosted and maintained by SAP, so again, those responsibilities are changing. But it is still fundamentally under the hood. It is still SAP HCM Payroll running on Enhancement Pack 8, hosted by SAP. It does have some integration advantages with SuccessFactors in the fact it uses point-to-point replication, so there's no middleware there. So, and EC is a prerequisite, as Pepijn said. So there's some advantages of payroll, but it's not a fundamental shift in technology. So customers who have a heavy SAP investment already might be using some third-party time tools, such as Adam, I think, mentioned on our previous chat as well. They might say, actually, this is quite complex to rip payroll and change fundamentally. With lots of things we need to plug back into this payroll, and I don't know if it's really massively giving us advantage. Then we start talking about end of life dates. Then we start talking about things like compatibility packs. Then S4HANA comes up in the conversation. Then there's the new product from SAP that we'll hear more about, I'm sure, this year, which is the H4S4, the very catchily named HCM for S4HANA. Even I have to keep working out which way around the H and the S's go in this acronym to really build it into me. So I think we'll hear more about that. But so I think it can, unfortunately, to give Sorry, I do work for a consulting partner, so I hate to give a consulting answer, but it depends. Sorry, Craig and Adam, I'm sure you've heard that before from partners. But I think there is a little bit of logical flow chart to it and decision tree making that can kind of reach you to the end. We've had customers who've been moving to HANA and stayed on premise, used a compatibility pack, effectively just regression test their payroll once they've gone onto HANA and gone live. We've had customers who have implemented EC payroll into certain divisions of their organization and looking to adopt it into the wider organization. And we've had customers who are still on ECC still now. Here we are in 2022 with an end of life date now at 2027 and extended into 2030 if there's extended maintenance is paid. So I think there's lots of options. And the one I don't know if Pepijn wants to add any more about is there's been in the future talk of a next gen payroll, something different from SAP, and I think that fundamentally would be a different game changer. It would be about disrupting payroll, a modern cloud technology, hopefully transforming sort of payroll operations, maybe looking at new. I'm hoping, because I don't know, and this generally I don't know, but I'm kind of hoping that will bring things like the ability to more like pay on demand, etc., and having sort of more of a microservices approach to payroll. And I guess in all these things, the business is asking themselves, it's about not how long, again, thinking back to what we said in our previous one, it's about what IT might be thinking versus HR. So what HR and IT might be thinking is not really about how long on-premise is supported for, but how long it's relevant for what the business wants to do. I think that's a key question.
Thank you, Stephen, and I'll certainly come back to that next gen piece. I think it might be a nice thing to finish our discussion on, Pepijn. We'll come back to that a little later. and Adam, just some of the things that were discussed there, and things that come to my mind is, and it reflects back on what you were saying earlier as well, that streamlining of HR processes, that kind of reducing the resource element, and that move to the cloud seems to support that greatly. But back to some of the potential challenges that Stephen mentioned there, and Pepijn as well, on what the on-prem payroll world gives you. It's okay, and maybe a controversial point I'll bring in here, but it's okay streamlining HR processes, but if you can't pay your employees, you've got bigger problems.
Absolutely, Craig. You've hit the nail on the head there, and I think it's for me, when we've been discussing this for a few years now, I think it all comes down to one big word, and it's fear. It's fear from various different departments. You've got the fear from the payroll team. Okay, I know this system. I've always used it. Let's be honest, it's not great. It's got a lot of clunky and a lot of customized blips that keep coming up. But I know how to handle all these problems that keep coming up every month. From an IT perspective, it's the fear of redundancy, let's be honest. If we go towards a SuccessFactors, what was touted to us, or certainly the literature that I've been reading over the years, perhaps it's less so now, is you can't build custom programs in an online world. You can have your calculation rules and your payroll schemas and such like, and that's fine, which I'm wiping my brow there. But you get down to the development team who are, here's a custom program, here's a custom program, here's a custom program, rightly or wrongly. So they're maybe looking at, you've got departments about that who are thinking, what do we do? Okay, we can do apps on that kind of side of things. From an HR perspective, it's the fear of, it's a whole new way to work. How quickly are we going to learn it? How long are we going to retain that? Is it going to constantly change like all the stuff on the on-prem seems to change? So from that perspective, yes, it's going to streamline it, but it's like any new journey for anything. It's not SAP, it's through life. It's something you don't know. It's fear of the unknown, I think, in summary. But putting a sort of a functional support technical head on, which I think all of us in the group here can kind of see both sides of, is you've got a custom system which provides you with these glitches that you keep raising tickets on every month. It's the same tickets. How much of this do you actually use? how much of this is actually getting in your way? Isn't this a perfect opportunity to say, okay, the timescales here are going to be ridiculous, so you'll have to bear with me. We'll be in the cloud by the end of the year. Let's start now looking at what we actually don't need. Okay, I've got 3,500 wage types. How many of those do I actually use? We don't have to lift and shift, because on a higher level management, of course, it's always how much is it going to cost me time-wise and money-wise to shift what I've got into there. This is a lot of stuff. And then you come back from a technical perspective after that analysis. Well, actually, we only need that much. Oh, well, that's better then. So it's trying to educate all departments on their particular aspect, but also not to keep it siloed, but education about this is going to affect payroll in this way, but that has a knock-on effect to HR. So you can benefit from the improvements we're having in payroll. I definitely see the benefits of the cloud. I see some pain points, but I know the guys at Pepijn, I know you guys are constantly looking at improvements. I know this. I mentioned time, as Stephen mentioned there before, and I know you guys are looking at this as well. So we as an industry use things that other companies may not use. We use time valuation heavily. Other guys may just use payroll, and they're perfectly fine to go straight to ECC. That's great. So again, it comes back to Pepijn's point. It's not one solution fits all. But I do think that it's not one solution fits all, but it is a solution that all can benefit from. Definitely is what I see. As long as you do really pick apart the system you're currently using. Don't be afraid to pick apart the system you're using. You like it. It's a cuddly little system that you've had forever. But let's be honest, it's not perfect. So I think it's a great tool for that.
I like very much, Adam, that perspective of fear to bring in that dimension, because a lot of the projects say, okay, everything is working, of course, in on-premise. So if we want to move to the cloud, we want to keep everything. And then lift and shift approach would be the thing. And that's why also this private cloud edition has a lot of appeal. But as soon as the project starts, then the discussions start from, hey, now we can actually get rid of a few of those wage types, or we
Spring
can actually,
cleaning,
yeah. So and along the process, the things get more complicated there. So you need to have an open mind and a good feeling for, okay, how much change do I accept in this move to the cloud, and how much do I want to preserve from what I'm doing at the moment. But that there's a lot of opportunities out there and a lot of things to innovate and to do things different. That is very clear, and that is also the reason why we think we need to have a different portfolio of solutions, just to cater for the different appetite for change.
Equally, though, I would think. Sorry, Craig, I'm jumping in here. Equally, I think, Pepijn, there's a point at which, from your perspective, you wouldn't want to be dragged into, okay, the customer's asked for this, we've got to give them this. The customer's asked for this now, we've got to give them this. There has to be a point, both internally in the company and from an SAP perspective. And again, you've probably seen it on a more widely perspective stage yourself, Stephen, where somebody at some point has to say, look, we've got to make a decision which may not please everybody, but for the future processing, it makes sense to stop doing it this way. It's a way that but it's flawed, or it's a way that this one's slightly different, but if you look to the future, it's actually a lot better if we implement this. So we've had customers come in and they've said, okay, before we come into SAP, different units that we've accumulated, before we come into SAP, we need to know that you're going to give us this, and this, which we currently give our employees. And we're trying to standardize, and we say, well, these guys only have these 3 things. You want all 5 of these? Somebody has to make a decision. We need to please them and give them everything. But then what do you end up with? You end up with a fully customized system.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think I remember when we first started working with SuccessFactors, God, 9 years ago, and I remember the first project and that thought of first point of going, actually, no, we can't quite do it exactly like that. I can't just run away and build you a screen or build you a thing that just does that. I can't answer that immediately exactly the way you want it. And at first, that was a very strange feeling as a consultant. I was working as a or PM, I think, at the time, and that was a strange feeling to kind of almost have to say no, because it's like, I'm the partner, I'm providing services to you as a customer, aren't I supposed to say yes all the time, and then just work out how much it costs, and then whether that's the cost you're happy with, etc. So it felt very strange, but actually it became sort of slightly empowering. And a few years later, we did a project with a multinational company, and the lady running the HR transformation program, she started off with this real mantra that said global simple standard. And at first she said it and it washed over me a little bit, and then the second or third time she said it, I thought, like, really hit it. And then she just kept saying it in all her teams, and eventually it hit home to me, some weeks later in workshops, when there was a point in discussion about doing something, and, well, this is the way we do it, and can't we do this, and can we do this, and can we change that to be like this, and it was getting a bit more complicated, and the whole thing was becoming a bit more. And in the UK we do it like this, and in France we do it like this, and it was like then becoming a whole discussion, and it sort of drifted. And then all of a sudden, one of her own teams, one of the own client team, said, stop, global simple standard. And it just, and the whole conversation stopped. And just with that mantra of just saying, like, let's try and standardize that, then all of a sudden the workshop just carried on, and it was like, okay, France will flex a little bit this way, UK will flex a little bit this way, this is a solution, keeps us very close to global simple standard, tick tick tick, let's move forward. And it did. And many times that sort of point, hold on, are we meeting what we've been asked to do, global simple standard? Does that meet this, or have we just made complicated, different, painful? I'm not quite sure that's the opposite of global simple standard, but you get my point.
No, I agree with you 100% there, Stephen. It's almost like you've got a hole digging shovel called yes. Every time you dig it, the hole gets deeper and the hole gets wider. And the fact that you mentioned empowering, absolutely. I came across all tingly when you said that. Absolutely. You go into a meeting and you're no longer, from my perspective on the functional side, you're no longer the one that sits in the background who's just taking notes, and at the end of the meeting you go out and you have to build it. You actually are able to come in and you look at the solutions that Pepijn and the guys are dealing with. You look at the wider audience that companies like yourself are also taking on board, Stephen, and you're saying, you know what, we don't have to do it this way. And it's not a nasty way. Obviously, it depends what kind of person you are, but it's not a nasty perspective to go back and say no. It's a case of not that far, and almost being able to go back to the customer. I think we've all been in situations where the customer, be it HR, payroll, whatever department, they think they know what they want. But when you actually sit down with your knowledge of the system and what the solutions are, you actually say, actually, that's not quite what you need. And you're able to come back, exactly as you said, from an empowerment point of view, with your knowledge and skills in the system and what the solutions can give, and the problems that constant customizing will bring from your experience, and say, what you actually need is something closer to what they've got. And then they go, yes, actually, you're right. So it's interesting to hear you say that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think people forget, well, probably a lot of people in IT don't forget, but maybe some other people forget, is that, what you create now, the hole you dig now, is with you for a long time, and it kind of, the effects of it ripple on. The other thing I would say is, like, because we're almost painting a slightly negative, not negative picture of saying no in the cloud, but what I would say is that in the cloud, or we're painting a negative picture of what the cloud has some limitations. But I'd also say that there are many, many things that are far easier in cloud SuccessFactors than on-premise HCM. So let me take a really simple example, a practical one. So let's take recruiting. If I want to set up an advert to a job board, literally with recruiting posting from SuccessFactors, there are thousands of them. There's no build and integration. There's no external middleware. There's no specs needed. There's no anything. It's just, make sure you've got either an account with that provider, that job boards, or set up the job board through recruiting posting. Whereas maybe with on-premise, how would you post a job from SAP on-premise recruiting, e-recruiting, to one job board, 10 job boards, 100 job boards? You'd be writing specs forever more. This was quite a complex thing, but with recruiting posting that's easily enabled. So and there's dozens of examples. I already mentioned mobile. The setup for mobile in the cloud is a million miles away from how it was on premise when you had to have SAP mobile technology and size servers and have servers specifically so you could run mobile applications. Amazing.
Just on that point and reflecting on that a little, one of the key things that came out of the last executive forum we had was the challenges that organizations were seeing around acquiring the right talent, retaining the talent, and developing the talent. So from that, you've already mentioned there, perhaps from a SuccessFactors and a cloud perspective, how much easier it is to look at how you can get out there and advertise and hopefully, recruit and attract the right people. How can the systems help you do that? Especially then moving on to retaining and developing the talent.
Well, I think the what SuccessFactors across lots of the talent modules, but particularly recruiting, and we often see that recruiting is one of the most popular modules. I don't know, maybe Pepijn knows from SAP's point of view whether it is still right up there, but once you get past EC as the core, as the central HR system, then I think recruiting becomes very popular. And again, it's the needs of the business needing to retain and recruit new talent and find talent in the war on talent, etc., the Great Resignation, etc., all these topics that are really talent driven. So we often see that HR, one of their requests is to say, we want to represent our brand better in the marketplace, and so that we became a place that employees want to work, because it's a lot easier to recruit people who want to come and work for you than it is to hunt them out from underneath in every corner of the world and really hunt them down and then convince them to work for you. Isn't it brilliant if they come looking for you? That would be much easier to recruit, and also you'd probably have a better employee because they're really enthusiastic about working for you. So if SuccessFactors can help you represent your brand better externally, can make a good recruiting experience, can make a good onboarding experience, so that by the time they walk in day one, they're super excited and super ready to work for you. And that's a massive plus.
Thank you. Anything to add there, Pepijn?
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on that point of being attractive for employees as an employer, right? Because, and I take maybe one step back into our discussions on payroll and how we can innovate in payroll. And over the last 40 years, there have been a lot of people, architects, but also PMs and all kind of salespeople saying, let's do this with payroll, let's improve there, let's make it better, one of those things was, let's improve it for the employee, let's make sure that payroll is actually reaching out to the employees and shows a face to the employee. At the moment, it is relatively minimal. We have a page statement that we show to employees, but why not make that dynamic? Why not offer chatbots? Why not offer an interactive page statement where you can drill down and get answers to your questions, right? That is also an appeal that an employer can bring to the employees, and that is one of the reasons and one of the components why we at some point have been discussing, so okay, shall we innovate in the on-premise stack? Shall we try to bolt onto that old stack of 40 years? Or shall we make a greenfield start and say, well, let's start putting all those ideas of payroll innovations and architecture innovations together and start anew. And that was the roots of the next generation payroll, by this employee-facing aspects, and the employee experience with payroll is an important dimension to that. There's lots of other innovations also of course we have the pain point of testing. I think it was mentioned before. Every time there's a change, we need to go through the whole testing cycle, and that is really a pain and a high cost driver. And there as well, we have been looking at the stack. Can we improve our current stack there? Yes, we can, but it would be a very high investment. So there as well, we said, well, the modern microservice architecture that runs payroll, where we can have very dedicated and low impact changes into the system, we are actually in a much better position to offer that cost of ownership question to the employees and say, well, hey, this is actually improving your TCO there, because the impact of changes is lower, and the ripple on effects. It's not spaghetti anymore, where you pull one string out and you see everything moving. That's not what you want anymore. You want to have dedicated places where you can improve. And there's in that way, there's loads of improvements that we wanted to do, and maybe I can. It's, I think, known in the market that we have selected UK as the first area where we would like to bring our next generation payroll. We are currently innovating with 10 customers in the UK and have started alpha testing already. And at the end of this year, we will start with beta testing, meaning that the customers will have much more hands-on onto the system. So that is on the way, but it will again be, and I'm going back to something I said before, for a selected group of customers will be attractive. It will certainly not be competitive with the on-premise code line, because that grew over 40 years. But there's a market for a new appetite, an innovative payroll for a small set of customers in the beginning, and we grow that over time.
Oh, wow. And are you going to rise to Stephen's kind of mention on what's going to be in there? Are you going to share anything with us at this point, Pepijn?
Well, yeah, why not? I mean, we feel confident enough in that what we have developed so far. So what we can do is show some more parts of the solution and elaborate a little bit on the innovations that we are doing there. But it's very exciting for the whole of SAP. It will be the long-term future of payroll, but at the same time we say, well, we have a portfolio of solutions, and each customer will have to select their own roadmap along those solutions. But the UK will be the first.
Excellent, excellent. And anything to add, gentlemen, as we come to the close? I suppose just one final quick question, if I may, from me, is just on the implementation. We've talked about, I think, quite a lot of the preparation in moving, and just thinking, Stephen, on kind of the differences in the actual implementation of both the SuccessFactors and the on-prem payroll and HR solutions. What do customers have to think about there from each perspective? Yeah,
well, I think fundamentally, again, given a slightly consultant's answer, there's the same but different. So what the things that are same are, like, fundamentally with any IT project, you need to prepare, gather requirements, configure, test, and then manage that deployment with its associated change out into the business. So, like any project, going live is just the start of hopefully realizing the benefits of the technologies. But thinking about what's different between cloud and HCM, I think we've touched on before, is provisioning is one. Infrastructure on-premise, you would be talking about things like sizing, procuring, managing, setting up, installing. Those are the sort of conversation we'll be having. Cloud provisioning is done literally in probably hours by SAP. So, once that contract's signed and it hits the right department, then these systems are auto-provisioned and then managed from that point forward. So that's a massive difference. If you think fundamentally, that used to be a whole exercise on an on-premise project. It would be painful with a lead time, etc., that would slow down your project, etc., etc. I think with cloud, we're also seeing a lot more rise in template solutions and how those template solutions and best practice content is consumed. So it's not just about best practice configuration, there's documentation to support it, test scripts, even data that can be used to initially show a process. So very quickly, not only can you get that infrastructure up, but you can get a solution up that has a baseline level that you can run an initial workshop with the customer. Whereas, we've probably all sat in IT meetings before where someone's drawn something on a whiteboard of how your system will look once the team have had 2 months to go away and do something with it and come back. So that's a massive change. And I think that also leads into one of the key differences in approaches, where we have an iterative approach to a build. So you're actually showing a solution, going away, making some changes, coming back, showing the solution again. And I think that also leads to something else, which is customers and users get their hands on a bit quicker to the system. And I'm sure Adam will say from his own experience of being on the customer side how valuable that is, and how almost frustrating it is when you just kind of sitting there talking about and whiteboarding and reading another long Word document that describes a solution that you will one day be able to press buttons on. How different that is from in the cloud world. So I think that, and the other thing we've already touched on is configuration versus customization. But let's not overplay that. There's a lot of things you can do by configuring in SuccessFactors that some people might get confused and say, oh, it feels like you're customizing it. It's not. The difference is you're not changing the fundamental code of the system, but you're changing the behavior, how the system might appear to end users. So yeah, of course, you're going to get your drop downs that have got the right values in that make sense to your business. You're going to get the right field labels that make sense to your business. Permissions are going to control what you can and can't do. So I think if you saw a handful of SuccessFactors systems, you would say, oh, they look basically fundamentally the same. I can see they're all SuccessFactors, but I can also see that there are differences and might be differences in the process as well. So let's not underplay how much configuration can help in allow you to do things slightly different. And then I think at the back end, at the exhaust end of a project, I would say the other thing is how you think about how you're going to support that system and manage the releases and updates to that system. That's quite a fundamental difference in the two approaches as well.
Thank you. And Adam, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I was just listening to what Stephen was saying there, and I'm writing down some key words here, and I've kind of reorganized them into a sort of an abbreviation. TLC, I think it would be. T for like training. You've got to, as Stephen was saying, you've got to get the system. You've got to train on a system. The technical department needs to train on it, and if possible, the business need to look at it and train on it so they know what the system is doing. And then the L part is learning. You've got to learn both the new system, and you've got to also learn what you still need, what you actually need from your system. You've got to basically learn the system you think you already know, your old system. We've talked a lot about the customization and getting rid of the dross, but you've got to go in with a business head. You can't go in with a personal attachment to a system. So you learn both the new and the old system. And then the C, I think, sort of comes in with it's the configuration, customization, cleaning out the dross. So there's a lot of different options in there. But it logically, when you look at it on paper, and we were talking about the flow charts, it seems fairly straightforward. Take the old stuff, get rid of what you don't want, learn the new system, and move on. But then, as you quite rightly said there, it's just the beginning of the process. Because once you're online, you're not going to never change anything. There's new stuff coming out. Pepijn's going to be giving us brand new Christmas gifts every year. This is new and this is brand new. But similarly, also, the further you go on, you're going to think, this is better. We don't actually need to do that one anymore. So we didn't think about it, but we don't actually need that one anymore. And here's some new functionality, the recruitment. We don't actually do recruitment very much. From our side, it's very email based, so you learn to get the new stuff in that's already there. So yeah, a bit of TLC I think will help.
Thank you very much, Adam. And Pepijn, any final words from you?
No, I thought it was a very interesting discussion, and thanks for the insight. It's always good and absolutely mandatory that we listen to customers and experience of partners in that thing out there. We have a lot of ideas, but it's fantastic to hear how that works out in the practice. So thanks.
No, thank you, and I would agree. It's been fascinating for me, and I also hope it has for our listeners. And gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your insights. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. So be sure to subscribe, and you won't miss another episode. So until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.